let's start with the question of what is nostalgia. To me, as a personal opinion, without having to look on like wiki for the actual like academic definition of it, is the feeling of happiness mixed with longing and melancholy you get from remembering the past. Nostalgia is a very powerful and emotional feeling you get after a certain age in life where you find yourself suddenly stuck in the middle of a road, awkwardly clueless of how you got there. You're tired, grizzled, dusty, and your clothes look wasted, but y- you have somehow learned a bunch of stuff along the way, except of how you got there. You can't explain the time it took you to get there, and you wonder what you even are doing there. Was this the place you were even aiming to go? You are a long, long way from home, and you almost wish you could go back there to where everything started and try to re strategize your journey in order to see if you could avoid a bunch of things that went wrong. Maybe you could avoid that super bumpy, rocky road that was there, and you had no idea about that ditch, and nobody told you about that hugely steep hill ahead. You were so comfortable back home, weren't you? You were under a roof with all your stuff, and everybody was there, and the sidewalk was paved. And how do I go back to that place again? That's how I can visualize nostalgia. It's a very natural and very old feeling, regardless of the fact that current culture has appropriated it to a point where it can feel like it's a very modern phenomena. Mainly, pop culture is defined by nostalgia since the last like 15 years or so, with remakes of movies and shows, revivals, sequels, prequels, spin offs, never before seen in the numbers that we are seeing them right now. Shows like Stranger Things, video games, music, fashion, and stuff of so many kinds I can't even remember to think of at this moment. If a company wants to make you spend, a company exploits your nostalgia. The power of this thing is like actually unlimited. You know, I would suggest even animals, mainly mammals, feel nostalgia somehow. From dogs longing to go back to their owners and home, their family. Elephants moaning they're lost. So many species migrating to their place of birth every year. It has to be a form of nostalgia guiding them, right? Maybe. I don't know. I would argue nostalgia is one of the side effects of being sentient. The past, your past, events and places far away in another instance in life, in other moments, are abstract in a sense. You latch onto them, not even always remembering exactly how they were photographically, but how you remember them. It requires a sense of understanding to know that you lost something. You need to have a certain level of notion of discerning and comparison and all these esoteric mental gymnastics in order for you to feel the nostalgia. I don't think every creature is able to reach that level of understanding, but still, um, for the most part, I feel that a lot of creatures, a lot of animals out there, a lot of life forms, probably feel it somehow. That might be, in a sense, maybe in a distorted way, related to how we understand it. Uh, it's probably the same type of emotion. I don't know how to describe it because I'm not other animals, right? So yeah, where am I going with all this? Uh, I was supposed to be talking about tumors. Well, there's a key element that I've noticed triggers nostalgia, and that element is the element of failure. There's always a sense that something has either failed in a way or is potentially very close to failure in order for you to wish you could go back to the beginning and re-experience it all as it was, where that certain it was still intact. It doesn't always have to be that obvious. For example, a 40-year old happy relationship might trigger nostalgia for the good old times, regardless of how good everything might be currently happening. But there's still the lingering feeling that the end is closer than further. You know, this happiness like has less years of just being. If you could be younger again, you could re-experience it all anew and escape the eventual end a little bit longer. The point of all this is that I was thinking, you know how it is. It's 11:45 p.m. I'm laying down in bed in the middle of the dark, waiting for the sleep to kick in. But for whatever reason, a recapitulation of my way back home from the flea market keeps crawling in my head, and the particular way the sky looked then. And then I had to pick up somebody from school, and we went to buy a hat for somebody that wanted a hat, and we ate Doritos, and it's so dark in my room. All of those thoughts that are usually in my head always are not distracted by anything anymore and are free to run amok like animals. Just you, you know what I'm talking about. For whatever reason, that entire block I walked, stepping only on the yellow line on the edge of the sidewalk, might have meant something, you know? Maybe there's a subconscious pattern there telling me something about a grander picture or whatever, some hidden meaning or something. What about that Mexican clone troopers short on Instagram? That was funny. For example, when they released Doctrine Dark or even Skullomania and Street Fighter 6, nah, they don't have the guts. They wouldn't do it. They won't even release Dudley in there. I mean, Doctor Dark would have been the perfect cameo appearance in any of those Resident Evil games they have been releasing over time. Remember that video from the other day of that kid talking about scary internet horror nostalgia of his childhood? Yeah, his childhood in like the late 2000s. There's a lot of kids nostalgic about their like 2010s childhood, right? Wait, how old was that kid? Was that dude again? How old are they? Like, they're nostalgic like around like age 20? Huh. This is a prevalent phenomenon online nowadays, ain't it? I mean, we have all experienced nostalgia, some kind of nostalgia at an early age growing up. But to this extent, hold on. At what age did you started feeling nostalgia? If you ever felt it at all, uh, it it hasn't really been like that in these past generations, apart from like really specific instances of history, like in war times or something of the like, right? Even my, for example, my depressed ass 19-year-old self didn't really felt this level of nostalgia until way later. that feeling wasn't really that shared in people the way it is now at all. I remember those times when you are that young. You usually don't look at the past with much consideration at all. You don't want to slow down and look back. You're too busy carelessly rushing to the future that looks so bright and exciting and so like promising, right? There's so many possibilities. The past sucks. It's where you it's it's where you were like a dumbass kid, like you were cringe, you know. You had no your style sucked and you were stupid. And who wants to be a kid? You want to grow up. Especially back then. Like you want to grow up and have like the control and you have power and look better, right? You want to have better things. You want to be better. You want to see like what's ahead. You want to rush to ahead. Even I, with all the issues I had, wanted to be more like like an adult. Maybe that would have fixed everything, right? I mean, it didn't, but I mean, we didn't have as aggressive of a bombardment of nostalgia media in that time, but still, this premature nostalgia might actually be the cry out of a symptom of something even bigger that we are gonna have to deal with sooner than later as a whole species. That one trend of summer nostalgia gave me a sudden realization that something even more profound that what it seems might be going on. I mean, it's very easy to just dunk consumers for all the right reasons you may come up with. I remember growing up when everybody hated those fucking Microsoft XP Zoomers, analog Zoomers, aka millennials, including me, one of those Microsoft XP Zoomers. Uh, it's crazy to think that we are officially old now. Like millennials are old now. Oh, and Zoomers are just like the millennial effect, but like double, right? And they are the generational punching bag now, but for even worse stuff. But have you ever considered that it's very typical to assume that everything wrong in the world is just like detached from you and we have nothing to do with it? Nothing is ever like our fault, right? Uh, but I mean, remember that Zoomers came out of somewhere at least. Still, you know, to this point, people are a result of like a man and a woman mixing to like sprout a new little Zoomer, right? Uh, I mean, at least to this point, we are not born with like software telling us every single step we are to take in our existence. We are still born as human beings, just like we have been since the very far away early ones that made those cave paintings. We need to learn things over time from our surroundings, from other people, from our parents. I'm most likely never gonna get the chance to have kids myself, but the parents of Zoomers are now more or less around my age, and our parents were the Gen Xers and Boomers before, and from there on, each generation inheriting a couple of flaws that resulted in the issues that plague our current landscape right now. For as much as we like to look back at the past and understandably so fond for those good old times where there was a lot of things going on legitimately better, we can't ignore that we have all too contributed to something somehow to how current issues have come to be. I would like to stay here and steadily dissect in detail with whoever might be there, here, around, whatever, listening, of all the ill things that have that generational declining pattern to make this modern world the way it is. I would stay here for hours and hours and never fully cover everything. But basically, I've come to certain conclusions about that declining pattern that has been steadily going on each generation, which a lot of people argue started since like the Industrial Revolution, or since ancient Rome, or since like the 50s, or so on, or whatever. I would argue it's been since thousands of years before all of that, even from an era I can't even grasp the understanding of. I hate the typical notion of that a lot of people have of ancient people as inferior or ignorant because their way of being is different from us, and they don't have like our technology or certain knowledge that we have. So look at how they were. Like, wow, they were so stupid. I don't like that. I disagree with that for the most part. But I can tell there was a pattern since way back, some kind of like deep corruption festering since then. Some seed was planted some time. Something was left unattended just to rot further later on. And I feel that's the main problem. Letting the issue just keep going because it's easier that way. And since you did that, the problem grew. And so the next person taking over you is going to do the same because they're going to have a bigger problem than the one that you had. And it's just going to keep going and going and going. So the main idea, so that I can make this thing, whatever this thing is, whatever this video is, as short as possible. I know there are a lot of exceptions out there, thank God. Uh, and not every case of Summers is as bleak as my clutching pearls is making it out to be. Not every streamer is completely clueless and misguided and addicted to technology and has like a shattered moral and spiritual ground and an attention span shorter than a sewer rat on cocaine. But people so young, looking with such longing for their really recent past, has to be a subtle cry out for a bigger issue. There might be some failure element appearing way earlier than ever in our like recorded history, probably that is going on under like our radar. I myself was sort of an exception too, in my own generation in a small way. Uh, I remember pondering about like social economical issues in my family and in my city and like, stuff like that. Since I was like 9, uh, there was a couple of things that triggered that, but I'm not gonna go into that right now because yeah, I'm not gonna go into that right now. But uh, I mean, I, I was still the same old dumbass kid that for a moment fell on the belief that Freddy Krueger must have been real because there was that Halloween episode, that Halloween cops special where they faced where they like attended calls from people attacked by Freddy Krueger, and Mulder and Scully were there,
Well, that's not
and there were
exactly.
FBI agents.
Another eyewitness
FBI
claims she sees Freddy
agents are
Krueger.
real, right?
Scully, what if
FBI
we're dealing with
agents
one
and
creature?
cops had to be real, right? Because cops is real, is like real life, right? X Files have to be real, like Freddy, right? Yeah. So I mean, what I'm going with this is that what I mean is that I was still a dumbass kid, but I was fortunate enough to have had the luxury to think deeply about things, figure out stuff for myself, and be dumb sometimes. And believe Freddy Krueger might have been real, but I figured I had a chance to figure out shit. I develop and learn the natural way. You know what I mean? Like just like explore. You know, my mind. Us millennials had the chance to have been born in a world right in the middle of like the digital overtake. We grew up in an environment where our childhoods, for the most part, for most people, which are like the most important formative years, were not yet as invaded and bombarded by social media and like mini computers in with us 24/7. Some of my childhood memories are still memories of me and my cousins exploring the wilderness by ourselves for entire evenings, swimming on the river, chasing a weird looking owl to a mini little cave up up a steep like hill, and not being able to climb all the way there, even though my cousins could, because I was like more of a shrimpy city boy, unlike them. I remember my feet shrinking in a mossy, swampy part of a river, sliding a rock like a water park slide, just soaking in the world. Just as much as I remember my early gaming memories and like morning cartoons or whatever, stuff like that. Like the kind of memories that are like usually most people in our generation has, right? Even with computers too, like playing with Microsoft Paint and stuff like that. Yeah, sure. But still, I had the luxury of getting so bored at times, stuck at home. I would spend hours drawing, making crafts and board games and like play sets, imagining things. I would get so like incomprehensibly like just furiously bored. I would force myself to think creatively and make up something. I hated it to no end. I got so bored. I got so bored. And now I really appreciate how much bored I would get and push myself to develop my brain and think adaptively, to think abstract and to be creative and just like be exposed to a lot of situations that a lot of young people don't have the chance to experience anymore that much. They don't have the luxury anymore of like not being overly distracted all the time. I started using the internet until I was like 16 or so, when my personality and like mental plasticity had been developed well enough to not have been as like contaminated by the worst of the internet in the same way. I remember being in like the end of like, I don't know, like third or fourth grade maybe, and having a conversation with a friend. I never talked about things like this with him, but we were somehow we were just like pondering about like the mysteries of the universe, like what could be out there beyond our sight, further than like the sky, far away, in another galaxy, or other realms. I don't know if he started it, or if it was me, or why we started going on about that. It, but it's still stuck in my head to this day because of that feeling of like that fiery sparkling in my mind that just like triggered. It was one of the most like inspiring and like enjoyable conversations I ever had. One of my fascinations was eating up everything I could find about like astronomy, and that conversation just like stuck with me. And like he was a kid too, around my age. We were all like, you know, very very little. Uh, uh, randomly, sometimes just like out of nowhere, talking, from innocent things like that. And like, for example, the hobby some friends and I had in recess of making up like comic ideas. I would draw during recess, on the spot, with all sorts of like zany and crazy improvised results. Like we would just like come up with something, and I would draw it. I was always like the better artist in my friends group, so I would always usually do that, and we would make like a little, really quick comic, right, about something, and that was fun. That was like a game we had in recess in school. Some friends and I, not all of us, but it was like three of us, not having anything else to think about or to just be distracted with. We just wondering shit. It all starts somewhere, very early on, and the environment you give to a child is going to have a heavy toll on how they become growing up. It's not an absolute or anything like that, but still, it still makes an impact. I wasn't educated in any kind of like particular snobby, like didactic way or whatever, any kind of shit like that. My parents grew up in like small towns. They just like introduced me to simple values of like honesty and good manners and effort, and old ass like normie type of values. I was also exposed by chance to very terrible stuff I can't go into right now. I'm not going to go into right now because of, but because of where I lived in, that took a lot of kids my age on like a terrible path that not everybody later on made it out of. The person you grew up to be is not determined as simply as the things you're exposed to, and that's it. But I mean, I know that. But still, I feel kids today are being given an even less fair chance of having just a healthy upbringing. A lot of us, and a lot of it is very calculated and very malicious. With the current upbringing of social media, AI, social credits, and internet surveillance and stuff like that, kids are thrown in this world with less of a chance to even with less of a chance than ever to even develop at all. As I said before, not every Zoomer is the stereotype, but a lot of those things you don't like about this current kid, it's not just happenstance. We all contribute to it at some points, or at least don't do much about it. Imagine being born where you're just allowed to be saturated with devices and the internet before you have even learned to talk, and that internet is tailored for the most part in a way that is specifically designed to dumb you down, to trigger your activation of dopamine, making you more and more addicted to what you see online. And that type of content is charged up with indoctrination of self destruction, self doubt, confusion about your identity as the very human being you were born as, destroy your attention span and your capacity to think critically, to short circuit your emotions, to make you desire materialism and toxic lifestyles beyond what even we were exposed to before. From your identity as yourself to your personal preferences to your political beliefs you should have. Not to mention that to today's cultural and internet landscape is formulated specifically in a way that rewards scummy, lousy, sheepish, shallow, and overall toxic behavior, even as far as like monetary rewarding, like IRL streamings and e-begging scams, all sort of like fakeness all overall all around, and then that gets copied and multiplied and evolved and perpetuated even beyond the original versions of the first creators that introduced it. Even stuff like crypto and AI. And I know a lot of triggered people are gonna cry about all like the positives of crypto and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, yeah, I see it. I understand. Even though you could, at least regular money is a little bit more positive overall in a slight way, but that's not the argument. The argument is culture. You, you know exactly what I mean. That blockchain AI tech bro sphere is one of the worst, most ill phenomenons we have these days, and those things are usually targeted towards younger people in a huge part. Imagine before you even know how to talk. Imagine before you even know how to walk. I break your legs so that when you grow up, I break your legs so that I can sell you cyber prosthetic legs later on when you grow up, because you're gonna walk faster with those legs and jump higher, and you're gonna be able to manage all your accounts with them and even pay for everything except that. Oh wait, they're also gonna monitor your every movement and are connected to your thoughts so that I can know exactly what you have in mind at all times. And if you don't like that, I or think of anything I don't think myself, or I like, or I want, for whatever reason, I'm gonna take away that your capacity to use your money, or make more money, or move or do anything. And by the way, you need an upgrade to the new Hover Pro model because your old Cyber legs are dated. Hover Pros are required now, but you're not compatible with them anymore. You need an update. You didn't know that? Your Cyber legs are a danger to the environment, moron. You damaged your soil with your steps when you fucking wait. You're an eco-tourist, and they promote the backward stereotypes of like oppressing and antiquated human form. They're a symbol of ableism and supremacy, idiot. It's very problematic, and you're gonna go into jail. Enjoy never having income ever anymore. Oh, and why am I allowed my natural legs? Oh, it's because I have more influence than you, stupid. Because I'm better than you. Not to mention every generation since somewhere around like the 50s experiencing an accelerated decline on all sorts of mental illness, exploding after the mid 90s and early 2000s. To wrap, what whatever this thing is anybody still even listening? I doubt it. I don't know. That wasn't the point of me doing this. I just needed to get it out because I had it in my head. Uh, to wrap this thing up, just don't be so hard on consumers. Even though they have the capacity to be responsible for their actions now, they're old enough now, fucking old enough, and they have the capacity to discern one thing from the other, and they might not be aware. To an extent, they might not be aware of how unfair they have been done. They were played very dirty. Just dunking on people that do things we disagree on is one of the easiest things to do if you really want to just appear smart or superior or whatever for like beginners of like trying to get that social score. I'm not trying to say not to dunk on people in general that deserve to be called out or anything like that, but let's just say that for the sake of like for the sake of argument, if you're in a position to be responsible for the development of somebody, be closer to them. Uh, Learn how to listen to yourself, put aside your biases and vanity, and just put yourself in the shoes of others. Especially if they're way younger than you. Remember, really young people are still really clueless and dumb, and they need guidance. They need somebody to step up and show them an example of how better they could be. I don't want to get too schmaltzy or even further corny or any more whatever. Fuck that. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I got it out of my system, I guess. Yeah. So whatever. Bye.